Good evening, everybody. It's John here from Tutor to You, welcoming you along to yet another of our live stream sessions for A-Level Economics. We're doing a little bit of revision in our fast-paced activity style, and tonight we're going to concentrate on economic growth. Just a quick reminder to those of you who are with us live, and those of you who are watching on catch up, do feel free to join in with the live window chat. Sorry for those of you who are live, do join in the live chat window there. But if you're watching this on replay, welcome to you as well. Welcome along to Nikki, I should say as well. Nikki is with me tonight. Hello, how are you, Nikki?
I'm fine, thank you very much. Looking forward to this.
Good, as am I. Quick reminder to everybody though, the PowerPoint that we're going to be using tonight will be available to download almost immediately after we've finished the activities. And also, of course, you can re-watch this video. Right, I think we might be ready to get started. Nikki, shall we get going?
Let's get going.
Let's get going. Here we go. We're going to start off with some multi-choice questions. So here we go. I've got three multi-choice questions for you. Number one on our list, the long-term trend in economic growth as shown in this diagram is what? So we've got our four answers there. Let me know what you think in the chat window. A, B, C or D. Now we're after a long-term trend here. So we've got a period of time on our horizontal axis. So we're after a long-term trend. So not something that's happening in a short period of time. What kind of answers are we getting in? San1789 is the first to respond with a B. Rudd has gone in with B as well. Have we got any other answers before we have a look at the official answer? Let's just give people a few more moments. San and Rudd. Here we go. Let's have a look. It is an upwards slope, if you like. We are going upwards from the beginning of this time period to end. I was waiting to see if anybody put D down there. It's fluctuating, and yes, we've got our booms and our bust in that economic cycle, haven't we? But if we're looking over a long period of time, we're looking about what's happening over that period of time, and it's either going to be going upwards, downwards, or remaining constant. Yes, there may be some fluctuations in an intermediate sense, but in a long-term sense, we would expect it to be either going up, down, constant, or it may go down and then up, or the other way around. But fluctuating is not normally a word we would use to describe anything happening in the long term. Right, let's try another question. Here we go. Have a look at the numbers here. In 2020, country X's potential GDP was 210 billion euros. Its actual GDP is 225 billion euros. The difference between potential and actual GDP is what? So what we've got again is one of these nice definition types of multi-choice questions. Basically, do you know what we mean when we talk about potential and actual GDP? Got loads of answers coming in. San's in again, as is Rudd. Leo's joined us this time for his answer, and we've gone A for all three of those. Is there anybody out there who wants to suggest, particularly if anybody thinks it's something different to A? I wouldn't mind knowing if there's somebody going to disagree with our three very clever people so far. No, nobody disagreeing. Let's have a look. You are, of course, right. It is a positive output cap. We know that the actual output of the country is higher than the potential, so that must mean it's a positive figure. It's an output gap, which must mean that there's probably a high level of demand going on in the economy, and because of that high level of demand, factories and workers are operating at above their general efficiency levels. So we've got a positive output gap. Well done to those of you joining in there. Let's try one more multi-choice question. Which of the following is most likely to lead to an increase in national income without an increase in the rate of inflation? So we're using the term national income this time. National income, that monetary value of the flow of output in an economy of both goods and services over a period of time. So what would we expect to be taking place if we've got an increase in national income, but we've also not got an increase in our general price levels? So let's have a look, see what anybody on the chat windows coming with a little bit more thought required, I think, with this third of our three. Leo is not certain, but Leo has gone with A. Rudd has gone with C. For the first time tonight, we have a difference of opinion. San has gone A, but with a question mark as well. Wow, so we're not so sure about this third one. So let's have a look at the correct answer. We're actually going with B. So thanks for those of you joining in. So if we're looking at increasing output or increasing national income, but without that rise in prices, generally it's going to require some kind of increase in levels of efficiency. So that's why an increase in investment in both the manufacturing and service sector is likely to lead to that increase in national income without causing an increase in prices. An increase in consumer spending, reduction in interest rates, both of those are likely to lead to an increase in aggregate demand. So, likely to lead to an increase in general price levels. So it's not that. An increase in exports is not likely to. It's difficult to say whether an increase in exports will actually not change the level of inflation. So that's why B is the better answer out of those two. Okay, I'm going to hand you over to Nikki now, who's going to be doing a couple of calculation countdowns.
Hi, good evening. Right, you're going to need your calculators or your phones out ready to do these. So, calculation countdown. First of all, we're going to have a look at the nominal value of a GDP in a country. We've got country X, nominal value of GDP is $1,400 billion in 2020. Now, we know that the price index, the base year in 2020, was 100. The following year, in 2021, the price index has risen to 103 and the nominal value of GDP rises to $1,450 billion. What is the real GDP for country X in 2021? We want the answer to 2 decimal places. So just a little hint, because this is a bit tricky. Inflation was 3% between the 2 years. Let's start the clock, John. Right, that was very fast, wasn't it? Very, very fast. Okay, so we know that between 2020 and 2021, there was an inflation rate of 3%. So we know that the nominal value in 2021 of 1,450 has been artificially inflated by 3%. So what we need to do is actually look for a figure that's going to be slightly smaller than 1,450. You can use that as a sense check. So we have to remember that the nominal figure, when we've included inflation, has sort of artificially inflated that figure. So we're going to need to use the formula. The formula will come up on screen. So real GDP, to get the real GDP, we have to put the nominal GDP, the one that we're looking at the moment, which is 1,450, and times it by 100 divided by the new price index. Okay, so we're going to put 1,450 times by 100 divided by 103. And the answer, when you do that, is 1,407.77 billion. So in other words, it's only just slightly gone up. The real GDP has only just slightly gone up. The figure 1,450 does include that 3% inflation. So you have to be a little bit careful when doing these types of calculation. You do have to know that formula, nominal GDP times by your base price index 100 divided by your new price index. Okay, always remember to use that sense check so that you know whether you're looking for a figure that's slightly larger or slightly smaller. Now, this one, you have to be super careful with. This is a bit tricky. So we're just going to spend a little bit of time thinking about the question before we start the clock. So here we have in 2021, we have a real GDP is 833 billion. The price index in 2021 is 104 compared to the 100 in the year previously. So, in other words, let's just stop and think about what this is saying. We're saying that the sum that we did in the previous question has already been done, and we have arrived at the figure of 833. What we need to do now is to go backwards. The question's asking us, what would the nominal value have been if we hadn't deflated it according to the inflation? Now, this is really quite tricky. In a discussion before this session this evening, we were thinking we don't think you will be able to, you would see this in an exam, but you're so good, and we've seen so many of you get so many questions right that we think you are going to have a good go at it. So we're going to start the clock, and just a quick sense check. We're looking for a figure higher than 833 because we need to now include the 4% inflation in our new figure. Well done. That's fantastic. Alicia, San, you're absolutely spot on. Leo, fantastic. Well done. Leo, don't forget to put the dollar sign in. If you're in an exam, you'd need to put the dollar sign in and the billion in. But absolutely spot on. That's brilliant. You lot are on fire again tonight. We knew you were going to be able to do it. The answer, of course, nominal GDP is the real GDP divided by the price index over 100. And of course, we're going to turn that into, it will be 833 times 1.04 or 833 times 104 over 100, 866.32 billion. Fantastic. Well done indeed. You're absolutely brilliant.
I said they'd be good, Nikki, didn't I? I did say they would be good.
You did.
Right, okay. We are going to have I think at least one, maybe two of our connection spinner rounds now. So with our connection spinner, let me just put up the main screen for us. We have got a question in the middle of the screen, which is to give me some examples, as many examples as you can, please, of any of the 6 items that are around the screen, which will be chosen completely randomly. So I have no idea what it's going to be by our little spinner. So let's get that going. Let's see what we're going to have here, and I'm looking forward to seeing your responses. So what have we got? Oh, okay, so it is demand side shocks to an economy. Just note on the screen we've got supply side shocks as well. That could be coming up a little bit later on. So we're just looking for demand side shocks. Have a think about that. Can you give me any examples of demand side shocks? Something that might send our economy downwards, or send consumption downward. Rudd's asking me whether this is year 2 content. Everything you do, of course, Rudd, in your A level can be at any point from the first day in year 12 through to the last day of year 13 can be examined. So yes, absolutely, this is year 2 content because it's content from the 2 years. Santa's come in with the pandemic, and is the pandemic going to impact upon demand side? I think it can do. I think in an exam we'd want to explain why the pandemic pandemic might specifically have demand side shocks. We know, for example, lockdowns meant that there was a fall in demand. So well done there. Any other responses? Any other suggestions before we have a look to see what we've got? Sam's also gone on to talk about recessions in main trading partners. Very good. Sudden reduction in interest rates, tax rates, exchange rates. All of those things can lead to a change in foreign interest in our goods. Let's have a look what we've got here. So well done to San there. I'll just have a look at Leo's just come in as well. Increased energy bills could affect household income. Absolutely. I don't think that's on our list, but I'd agree with you, Leo. You're absolutely right. So yes, an economic downturn in a major trading partner. That was the one San pointed out, as was also tax increases. I think we've included financial crisis causing bank lending to fall. So we've made a point there of saying specifically that the financial crisis led to a fall in the amount of money that was being lent out to people, which in itself would lead to a fall in demand and consumption. Brilliant. Shall we have another go? So another one, let's see. All I know is it'll be one of the other five. We won't have the same one again. So let's have a look to see what our second one is. Here we go. Will it be supply side shocks? Let's have a look. Or it could be. No, it's just gone one section further on. Drivers of short run, and notice again on the screen we've got long run in the section above. So we're specifically looking for short run drivers of economic growth. So we know that in the long run, economic growth generally means that the cost of productions and technology are staying relatively constant. So we're looking for factors beyond changes to cost of production or changes to technology. Let's see if we've got any suggestions there. Any suggestions from our live viewers tonight? I'll give you a few more moments to have a think about that. What could be driving short-run economic growth? What could we say here? I'll give you a few more moments. This one appears to be creating a little bit more need to think and need to tinker with what's going on inside your head. I'm going to show our responses any second now. Here we go. Let's have a look. Oh, sorry. Just as I said that, we've had some coming. Short-run economic growth based on increased utilisation of resources, increase in consumer spending, investment, government expenditure. Thank you, San. Yes, cuts in taxes, more workers joining the workplace. Thank you from Leo. Those are good responses to what can lead to short-run economic growth. We've got our fall in interest rates, increased government spending, so increased government spending, fall in commodity prices, and then an improvement in business confidence, which can lead to businesses wanting to consume more, employ more people, leading to short-run economic growth. Well done there. Right, okay, back to Nikki for some bubble quiz questions.
Oh, I love these ones. So remember that the answers, it can range from 0, and we did have one last week where there were no right answers. It could be all 4 are right, or it could be something in between. So we do have to identify the correct answers and be very careful. So first question, which of these would be counted when calculating gross domestic product? Now, just before you answer this, I want you to think back to that circular flow of income. When you did that circular flow of income and you had those flows of money around the economy, you might have come across the equation I, income, is equivalent to E, expenditure, which is equivalent to O, output. I want you to have that in mind while you think about these answers. So, which do you think are the correct answers when calculating gross domestic product? Let's have some answers in the chat box. Just list some letters and let's see what you think. A, B, and C from San. Okay, that's a good start. What do we think? Well, rental income from ownership of land is, of course, rent back to a factor of production. So that would be included in the income flow on the circular flow of income. Well done. Income from people in jobs, again, income. Dividend payments from share ownership, so that is a form of income, and government spending is a form of expenditure, so that is also part of gross domestic product. So it's all four. And you have to remember, might need to revise if you were worried by this, that income is equivalent to expenditure is equivalent to output. San, you were so nearly there. You just needed to keep reading. Well done. Don't be disheartened. Let's crack on with the second bubble quiz. Okay. Now, value added. Value added is the value of production minus the value of intermediate inputs, okay, used in the supply of a good. Leo, I think somebody might be answering you in the chat. I can see your question there. John might be kind enough to answer you. So when we're thinking about value added, for those of you who do business as well, you cover this bit in a slightly different way. So we're looking at what sort of industries add a lot of value. They tend to have a lowish cost of production, but end up with a very high price. Okay, so which of these industries, mass produced foods, social care, precision engineering, so that might be in manufacturing with small components or laser guns or something in surgery or something in very high tech machinery, aerospace, which ones of those would you consider high value added industries? So give me some answers in the chat. Let's see what you think. Shayna, income is equivalent to expenditure is equivalent to output. Just to answer you that, go back to your circular flow of income. So let's have a look. Question 2. Leo thinks A and B. Now we're looking, the question is, which of these would be considered high value added? So we're looking for very highly priced output. Okay, really highly priced output in question 2. Which do you think? Should we have a look at the answer? Okay, the answer, precision engineering and aerospace. Some really good application here. So both of these industries, what we're doing is we're adding huge value. We're taking some bits of metal, but because it's precision engineering or some bits of glass, we're adding high value to them. Aerospace, an aeroplane is just bits of metal and plastic and goodness knows what else, but the cost of an aeroplane or a satellite or something in aerospace, huge high value added. So good application here. Okay, last one on the bubble. Which of these are genuine alternative measures of changes in living standards? So we're looking for changes in living standards. So it's not just economic growth, but which of these are real measures used by economists when looking at changes in living standards? What do you think? Let's have a look. A and C, says San. Well, it is all of them. The Human Development Index is the most common that you'll come across in your economics A level, which measures, of course, life expectancy, access to knowledge, as well as a decent standard of living. But the genuine progress indicator is becoming more and more popular because it's GDP, but it takes away the negative effects of economic activity, such as crime and resource depletion. Happy planet, definitely a measure of standard of living. How much it would be used by governments, well, you might not see it quite so often. The same with the Better Life Index, but the Better Life Index, look out for it. You will actually be seeing it more and more because it brings in the quality of public services. So it starts looking at how good our governments are providing public goods and creating good living standards for us. So look out for the Better Life Index. Okay, pass back to John now.
Thank you very much, Nikki. And sort of following on from that last bubble quiz question, we've got one of our what we call on balance questions here, where we're asking you to think about advantages, disadvantages, pros or cons. And whichever specification you're doing, whether it's EdXL, AQA, OCR or any of the others, you're told that you need to have some kind of critique of the measures that are used for any of the macroeconomic performance indicators. So we're obviously concentrating on economic growth, and so let's concentrate on GDP in particular in terms of any kind of critique we can make of that as a measure of economic growth. So what I'd like you to do, just going to give you a few moments here, see what we get in the chat. Let's just concentrate on the advantages to begin with. Let's just see if we can get any pros for using GDP as a measure of economic growth. Let's see if anybody can come in with some responses here. So any kind of positive, any kind of pro, any kind of advantage that somebody can tell me of the use of GDP as a measure of economic growth. We have these other measures, these other things that we could use to make some kind of comparison in terms of what's happening with standards of living. But why do we tend to use GDP? Sana said GDP can be used to help for governments to make decisions if they've got the information there. It can help estimate likely tax revenues, likely welfare expenditure, determine growth and inflationary pressures. Absolutely. Leo, a standardised measure across the world, simplistic to draw comparisons. And comparisons between economies, we know is an important part of looking at our macroeconomic performance. We'll look at the UK at the moment. We'll talk about inflation being high and all sorts of things that aren't going very well at the moment. But if we look at other countries having similar issues, we know that it's perhaps a global problem and therefore requires a global response as much as an internal one. Sana's come back again. GDP can be used to assess living standards within the country, though there are negatives, which we'll come to. Yes, absolutely. Let's have a look at what we've got here, and then we'll come to negatives in a second, as Sana says. Yes, there we go. Allows for international comparison. That was Leo's suggestion, and easy to measure. It's an easy to measure way of showing a difference between one time period and another. Brilliant. Okay, what about some cons then, some disadvantages? So you know that GDP is used as a measure of economic growth. You're probably going to talk about it if you're discussing economic growth as part of a longer answer, but it could be that your examiner is after some kind of critique of why it may not be the best, or it may not, why others might be used, for example. Why might we use others? What is it about GDP that actually could suggest it has some issues? Leo's come in with, sorry, Sam was in first. GDP can be used to assess living standards. Sorry, I've read your last one, Sam. You've been giving me so many responses tonight. I thought you'd come in with another one. Leo said can only account for the final value of goods and services produced and ignores goods made in the what Leo is calling the informal sector, and we've got different terms for what we might mean by the informal sector. But yes, that's a good response. Any other thoughts? Any other cons? Any other disadvantages we've got from anybody? Just before we have a look at what we've got here. Okay, let's have a look. So absolutely understates the real national income due to what we've called the shadow economy. So Leo called it the informal sector. Difficult to measure the value of services. So when we're actually putting our calculation together for GDP, one thing that is difficult to actually assess is actually how much what is the value of our services. We can put some nominal numbers sometimes to services, but it's certainly more difficult to make a genuine valued assessment, comparing that to selling 2,000 cars in a month, which is much more easier to actually measure. Brilliant. Fantastic responses. Back over to Nikki for our final activity.
Great, our final activity. I just want to come back on San on his previous comment. GDP can be used to assess living standards. Do take a little bit of care there, because it should be GDP per capita is what you use to assess living standards, but I'm sure that's what you meant. Right, this last activity, Evalu Wheel. We are going to see a line of argument that a student has made as part of an answer to an essay question. The wheel is going to spin, and it will select a line of evaluation that we then want you to write. So one of those depends upon assumptions, perspectives, etc. will come up on the wheel. We want you to write a line of evaluation. Now, before we move on and actually conduct this activity, do remember you can download this PowerPoint and you can use this slide to test yourself and to practice the skill of evaluation, which some students find incredibly difficult. These will give you hints on what to think about and to set you off on your evaluation. So let's have a go with the evaluate. So this is what the student's written. The question was, to what extent is economic growth always beneficial? Economic growth should lead to higher living standards. That is, an increase in real GNI per capita. In developing economies, this will help lift people out of extreme poverty and improve development outcomes. For example, rising HDI. That's what our students written. We are going to spin the evaluate wheel. Here we go. Whoa, equality, equity. So we now want you to write a line to say, to have some kind of evaluation. What is the impact on equality or equity, economic growth on higher living standards? So have a little think. How are you going to write a line on this student's work? Imagine you're the teacher and you want to push them in the right direction using equality or equity as a line of evaluation. What do you think? So the student has said, in developing economies, economic growth will lift people out of extreme poverty. Wow, San, you're absolutely right. Economic growth could possibly lead to greater income inequality because, as we know, the economic growth might well lead to higher real GNI per capita, but does everybody get a fair share of that new GNI per capita? Unlikely. It's likely to be the businesses or perhaps in cities. So it might not actually be spread equally. So here we got here we go. Leo's got another one. Wealthier people could get more of the benefits than marginalized communities. What a fantastic response, Leo. Well done. Higher living standards may not be felt equally throughout the economy, and some regions, particularly rural and agricultural areas, may continue to suffer from poverty. I love your comment about marginalized communities. What a great phrase. Everybody, let's learn from that. Thank you, Leo. Right, I shall hand back to John.
Oh, well. Just thinking, actually, and making sure my microphone's working. Yeah, you can hear me, Nikki.
I can hear you. We've got a new question from San, though. What do we mean by is it fair? Is that new real GNI fairly distributed?
Yeah,
That's what we mean.
absolutely. And Nikki, I completely agree with you. Leo's use of the marginalised community phrase, I think that's even better than the one that we had there about sort of like we identified sort of like rural or agricultural areas, but a marginalised community is an even wider way of saying that. Absolutely brilliant. I tell you what, Nikki, I said to you before we started, we'll have some good students tonight, and I can't believe how good that some of those responses have been coming through. Of course, a big shout out to Alicia, who was the first person to respond to that tricky countdown that we had. Well done to Alicia. But a massive, massive round of applause must go to Leo and San for the quality of some of their answers tonight. Absolutely brilliant. And thank you to Rudd as well, who contributed some answers as we were going through that session. Brilliant stuff. Now, a quick couple of reminders to you before we sign off for the evening. As Nikki said before, the PowerPoint that we've got available that we've been using tonight will be available in about 45 seconds time. So please do download that if you feel as if it'll be useful. And don't forget, of course, you can rewatch this entire video if you really wanted to do that. There's another thing to tell you about if it's not a reminder. Of course, the great wonderful deliverers and contributors from Tutor to You are actually about to go on one of their road shows, one of their tours. So if you're interested in coming and having a go at some of these activities live, or spending a whole day revising topics in economics in preparation for mocks, or just in preparation for improving the way you go about learning, revising, preparing for your exams, do join us. It's called Strong Foundations. Have a look on the Tutor2 website. We are running a series of live events in cinemas called Strong Foundations in A-Level Economics, and we would love to see you there. We'd love to see some of those wonderful responses that you've been giving to us on the YouTube chat window live in a cinema screen, hopefully not too far away from yourself. Massive thank you to everybody who's contributed. Also, massive thank you to Nikki, who I think looked like maybe something you want to add in there.
Just because Leo said, how do we download the PowerPoints? And I think it's straight from the Tutor to You website, isn't it?
It is. So the way that you access this live stream, in a few moments' time, if you go back to that very same page, it'll pop up with a little download button at the bottom, and you can download the PowerPoint from there. Brilliant stuff. We're back again next week, Nikki, I think, aren't we? We've got one more of these before we go on tour. So one more. And we're looking at economics in the real world next week. So non-topic based. It's going to be lots and lots of wonderful examples from UK and around the world that can be applied directly to key terms, key topics from your A-level economics. So we'd love to see you back then. Until that time, we'll say good night. Goodbye, everybody.
Good night. Bye.